Well, good afternoon. I am 17 minutes late and I am embarrassed. I hope you guys will forgive me. Okay, I'm still, there. Okay, there we are. Okay, I am 17 minutes late and I am embarrassed. Please forgive me. Um, yes, this is, sometimes best laid plans, don't go as like we think they will. So, I if I'm working my other job, the one that pays all the bills, then I got to be there when they need me there. So I ran just a little bit late, so I apologize for that. Okay. Got to put a picture up here of Miss Lori Vallow. Oh, it's not Lori. How silly of me. Okay, first of all, can I say this? I recognize probably more than you would believe that the death of JJ and Tylee is a nightmare. It it's a nightmare for the people that are still here. Okay, it is. Charles Vallow, his death, horrendous, and it was made all the more horrendous because he begged for help. We've seen the videos of him begging the police officers for help. He told them that his wife thought that she was Moroni and that she was going to kill him if he got in the way of her plans to be the queen of the 144,000. He begged for help. We all saw it. We also saw the videos where Lori and Melanie, what? Gibb, um, basically manipulated and lied to the police officers. It's very interesting to me that Melanie has been mixed up in at least the Arizona um, games to the point that she actually showed up the night that Lori stole her husband's truck, had all of the furniture moved out of the house, and ultimately changed the locks on the house. And she canceled his flight reservations. When he got home, he couldn't get in the house. When he did finally get in the house, there was literally nothing there. She's a game player. And who's been along for the ride? Melanie Gibb. Hell, I hate to say this, but the last known sighting of JJ, Melanie was there. The weekend that we are all under the impression that sweet little boy lost his life, Melanie Gibb was there. I have some curiosities about another person that was potentially there. Was this a some kind of religious observance, what they did to JJ? I don't know. But I find it incredibly coincidental that the night that this little boy loses his life, you got a lot of people there. Well, we know that there were 4 people there that were filming or recording the podcast. But then remember, they all met up at the land that Chad wanted to show them. Chad wanted David Warwick to build some kind of building there. And all of this was related to Chad's vision that Rexburg was going to be the new, I don't know what, Jerusalem, Garden of Eden, Holy Land, whatever sickness his brain came up with, right? David Warwick was a legitimate preacher in Australia with a large family, and he suddenly gets divorced, comes to Indiana, and then decides that he's going to move to Rexburg. And you believe he wasn't involved in this, let's call it what it was, cult? I think that we know about 1/10 of the facts of this case. I do not understand why every time we get started, my little animals demand so much attention. Okay. I'm looking for, hold on. I believe I put it under weird things. Let's see where it is. There you go. Cult of the Chadster. Okay. So, where this is concerned, I believe that we know about 1/10 of the reality of the cult of the Chadster and his love goddess. I think that it's my opinion, that this is a great example of two people and their mental illness coming together in a way that creates a firestorm of insanity. And you have to accept this is where I think the cops haven't quite gotten just yet. Okay. But from where I sit, my training, my clinical experience and whatnot, I watch all that has unfolded in this terrible, terrible thing. And I ask myself, okay, it's a fairly basic awareness of interaction effects between two people with personality disorders, that a personality disorder by itself is difficult, right? If it's a severe personality disorder, it can even be, nightmarish. But there's something very special that happens with the effects of personality disorders when you put together someone that is narcissistic / antisocial personality disorder with someone with dependent personality disorder. There's this interactive effect that, yes, having dependent personality disorder is difficult by itself. But when it gets paired up with somebody that is either antisocial or narcissistic PD or both, right, it takes on monster quality. For example, you are a dependent personality disorder and you are with you have a child with a man who is sociopath, antisocial personality disorder, and he ends up killing your child in a fit of rage, but you're so fearful of being alone, your fear of being frozen by inaction, lack of decision, it feels safer not to report the death and to go along with just hiding the death of the child. And you rationalize that to a point that it's okay, that this is all about survival. And so because you actually lack the inability to take care of yourself, to imagine yourself on your own, to be indecisive about exactly the proper way to report the death or to report the abuse, that those limitations are so extreme that it makes more sense to you to stay with a guy who is hostile and belligerent and violent and scary. It makes more sense to stay with him and hide the death of the child than it does to be able to get away. And these nightmares play out all of the time. We often make these jokes that people that have dependent personality disorder and antisocial or narcissistic personality disorder, that those are the stories that make it to the 6 o'clock news. That's your volatile mixture, or we call it interaction. Okay. So the interaction effects are devastating. Now, in the situation of the Chadster and his love goddess, here's what I really think that we're talking about. And this gets this is going to get a little bit, well, no, this is going to get really confusing. Okay. And I think I'm going to start here. I think I'm going to start with Bipolar I. Okay. Now, we've heard of bipolar. We've heard of Bipolar I, Bipolar II, yada, yada, yada. And this is not a, PhD antisocial personality. Abnormal behavior or abnormal psychology course. But for the sake of argument, we basically have 3 different diagnoses that are considered cycling diagnoses, where the mood goes to extremes. It goes to high energy to low energy, and then that's Bipolar I, Bipolar II, and then in the case of cyclothymia, you're still going high energy to low energy, but the power of the high and low is less. So it's just moderate high, moderate low instead of these really extreme. In children, it's generally accepted cycling happens much faster. Some kids can cycle as much as 1 to 2 per day in a 24-hour period. Most adults will cycle over the course of weeks, or the norm is really months. So in Bipolar I, that's sort of the big one, right? That's the winner in first place is Bipolar I. Okay. The reason I say Bipolar I is the winner, it gets position number 1, is because this is where you have the true mania. Okay. Mania is often misunderstood, and that's because of good old Hollywood trying to sell movies. But in the reality of being in a clinical situation where you're, assessing a human being, mania, yeah, it can come off, it can be expressed as a person who has really high energy, like they've had too much coffee. Perhaps they're speaking very quickly. They may be laughing, thinking things are really funny when actually everybody in the room is going, okay, that's not funny. Why are you laughing? But I will tell you, especially in the case of teenagers, mania can very often be anger, unexplained anger, or anger that is pronounced. It's bigger than what the setting would call for. So anger can be a part of this idea of mania. Now, there's something very special about Bipolar I. And frankly, there's not a lot of people that have true Bipolar I. A manic episode is not something you're going to guess. Like, you don't look at somebody that's having a manic episode and go, maybe this is mania. No. If somebody's having a manic episode, you look at that and go, damn, that's a manic episode. You're gonna recognize it when you see it, because it's so far outside of normal human energy. Now then, a lot of people like the mania, or more accurately, they like the hypomania, and that is they're filled with a lot of energy. But the mania is not so bad that they're ineffective. They definitely have increased energy, but their thoughts are actually just working faster and better. They feel like they're more efficient. They feel like their memory is improved. And these are the times when people are most creative. So it's one of the problems that we run into in trying to treat people that have bipolar II, is they don't want to take their medication because you're basically taking away their creativity. They don't like that. Whatever their activity is that they do when they're in this heightened state of alertness, that goes away with medication, and they don't like it. Many bipolar 2s come to really enjoy their manic periods, or not manic, but hypomanic. The bipolar 1 is the only one of the 3 classifications that you get true mania. And like I said, depending on the specifics of the chemistry and whatnot, it doesn't have to be happy energy. Very often it can just be anger, or even the energy just pointless, just frenetic movement and no real goal-directed activity. The irritable mood part is just, to me, I think for me, just anecdotally, I think irritability and anger is what I most often notice. Right now, if you get somebody in a big manic, like let's say you're working at the hospital, somebody gets admitted and they're in a manic episode, there's really no doubt that they're in that manic episode. But for kids and teenagers, you're really looking at irritability is usually the hallmark. And I'm saying that's anecdotally for me. That's usually the hallmark that I can see. And possibly, there's kids that are having the extreme happiness during their cycling, but the parents just think the child's being silly or goofy, and they don't look at it as a problem. Now, later on, when that child is no longer cute with excess energy and they become an adult who can't focus their thoughts or engage in goal-directed behavior, then it becomes apparent quickly that the person's having trouble. I once knew somebody, like a 70-year-old woman, who had been dealing with bipolar 1 nearly her whole life. She was supposed to be on medication, like is common. She very often would go off the medication because she thinks she was cured, or just wouldn't like the way she was feeling. And she ended up going online and finding 10 houses that were for sale. These were old, broken down frame houses, and she purchased them with all of the money that her husband had left her, and she was going to make them all rental properties. But they were in such bad shape, you really couldn't rent them, and they were about 25 miles outside of town. So it was really difficult. We went to heroic efforts to work with the district attorney and the police, and to try and come up with an arrangement that they could, give her back some of her money and take back the sale of the houses. And it was a sad situation. So these very unusual types of behaviors when you're in that manic state and you feel like you have all of these just these great ideas, brilliance that no one's ever considered before, and it gets people into a lot of trouble. Also, people can become very sexually promiscuous during these manic episodes. You got to think everything in their brain gets put on hyperdrive, and the biggest sex object that we have is our brain, our imagination, and then the chemicals and whatnot that fuel that reaction. And so you can see acting out with sexuality. These people that are bipolar 1 and bipolar 2, they have a decreased need for sleep, and some of them will tell you that they haven't slept in a couple of days. Most of the time you see pressured speech, meaning they're speaking very quickly and they have a hard time, ratcheting it down so other people can really kind of understand what they're hearing. High level of distractibility, although I got to say that for people that I've seen that were truly manic, if they had a skill or a talent or a craft, like a hobby or something that they would create, painting, during the manic period, you can actually see like a hyper increased level of attention and concentration. So, that's kind of interesting. And then finally, we get to a big one, and that is increased risk-taking behavior. So the increased risk-taking behavior kind of leads us into the story about Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell, and how do we go from a woman or a guy? How do we go from? Gosh, don't bark. How do we go from a woman who's, driving her kid to school every day and cooking for the family and going to not chapel, what they call it, going to, not mass, whatever they called it, temple, going to the temple. How do we go from that to a woman who seems to support the killing of her teenage daughter and then later her child? How do you get there? Well, as I pretend to be Dr. Grande, and I don't diagnose people online, and I just explore the possibilities of what might be happening, one of the combinations that might explain this is this combination between bipolar disorder with severe mania and I'm sorry, I got distracted, and schizoaffective disorder. So bipolar psychosis is a fairly common term, I think, that's used in psychiatry. And very often the medications that are used to treat schizophrenia have also been proven effective in bipolar psychosis. Theoretically, bipolar psychosis is associated with a severe mania, which would be you'd be required to have a bipolar I diagnosis, and that you're as you're cycling into mania, it has to be like on the extreme end. I once knew of a young man who had never had a psychotic event in his life, no delusional thought, nothing like that. But he was bipolar. He had been diagnosed bipolar in high school, and he went through some fairly serious trauma that triggered a manic episode. And during this manic episode, he was working at a restaurant, and it was his job to take soup off the stove and pour it into a heating dish that would hold it as they dished out the cups or bowls of soup through the night. And the first sign that he had that he might be having some sort of problem was when he went to pour the soup from the cooking pot into the big heating pan. Instead of the soup flowing out nice and warm in a beautiful stream like it normally does, he said it came out in cubes, like ice cubes. And he said he was watching it, and in his brain he thought, that is very strange that the soup is coming out in ice cubes. Why? And he remembered, he said he looked around the restaurant to see if everything else looked normal, and it did. And yet he looked back at the soup, and that it was in these cubes that were just about the size of an ice cube. So that was his first clue, that thing. And it did go progressively worse from there. But that just shows you how serious these sensory perceptual anomalies related to psychosis. They can be they can be pretty trippy, they can be pretty bad. Now, there are people that argue and say, no, it's not that the bipolar psychosis is only associated with mania, but you can also have depression. the depression part of the bipolar cycle, the depression can be so severe that the disruption in the neurotransmitters can end up with the person being dopamine dominant, and that too will trigger a psychotic event. And I also heard people maybe, I guess, postulating on this idea that maybe Lori or Chad both experience some kind of brief psychotic disorder. And that's all fine and dandy. I don't have a problem with that. But here's the problem with applying that particular diagnosis in this situation is that you've got a time limit on it, which is, that the symptoms resolve within a month. Well, clearly they didn't, because this went on for a very long time. And so of all the potential problems that they could have been holding Lori on, I think the one that best explains the situation might be the bipolar psychosis. And that would have also responded very well to medication. Right? Now then, are there people that have gone on record, either through an interview or that we've read in police interviews and that kind of thing, that would suggest that Lori goes through periods of increased energy? And I would say absolutely. And the first one that I would come up with would be Zach, who said, remember the conversation that he said that his aunt, Lori, began saying that she would never have to eat again and that she would never have to go to the bathroom again. You remember how strange that was? Well, people that are manic typically don't eat because it's like their brain is on speed, right? So and that's what it comes down to, Teresa Fountain, is it's not that you have the proper level of neurotransmitters and hormones in your brain at any given time. It's that there's a ratio of certain neurotransmitters and hormones that need to balance out. And when dopamine gets very high and the modulating neurotransmitters go low, then you can still get these psychotic episodes that are not technically like schizophrenia. Schizophrenia is associated with something in the brain just makes too much dopamine. And that's the primary problem in schizophrenia, is the amount of dopamine. If you take mushrooms, if you use psychedelics, you're generally giving yourself, an induced type of, perceptual disruption, which is what happens in schizophrenia. So you're playing around with levels of dopamine. Low levels of dopamine, when the body gets too little dopamine, then that can have a different array of problems. And that's something that you see like with people that are schizophrenic and they take medication to control their levels of dopamine, then they develop what's called schizophrenic shuffle. And that's just a byproduct of having low dopamine and your body failing to have smooth movement. And it kind of makes them walk in a funny way. You see the same thing with Parkinson's, though, because you don't have the right neurotransmitter. So all of these things they're all dependent on the chemistry in the brain. And that's why sometimes some of these symptoms overlap and you think, no, you're wrong. It's got to be this. No, it's got to be that. And it's why they put limits on some of these symptoms. And so I think of all the different possibilities that could be applied, that could explain, well, how is it possible that Lori seemed to be fairly normal for a period of time in her life? And then now she's so insane that someone's willing to say this woman is not competent to go to trial. You've got to be really, really, really out of touch to have a doctor say this person's incompetent and can't, support their own defense or their own case. So I do think that this is probably the most likely scenario, is that she has possibly had bipolar throughout her life. And I do believe 100% that the behaviors that we've seen from her, what Kay and Larry Woodcock have described, what Annie has talked about, Joe Ryan's sister, there are definitely stories out there about Lori that would be consistent with a diagnosis of a female with narcissistic personality disorder. I'm not even really waffling on that thought, but you don't typically get an array of symptoms that would cause a doctor to evaluate you and say, hey, you're not competent. She had to have been completely, nearly out of touch with the immediate environment, or saying things that were just so far outside of reality for that she would not have any awareness of the role of a judge and the jury, and why she might even be in the courtroom. And it is quite possible that the trauma that she experienced was enough to create, to throw a manic episode, to cycle into mania, and get, we heard she wasn't eating, she wasn't sleeping. So all of these things work together to fuel this very real physiological brain reaction where the neurotransmitters are completely out of proportion to where they should be. And she becomes very erratic, and perceptually she's having all sorts of wild imaginings. I didn't say wild speculation. Wild imaginings, perceptual anomalies, seeing things that other people can't see, hearing things that other people don't hear, believing that she's Queen or Moroni or any number of things. And I think that would be, if she was arrested and now her environment's being controlled, slowly she begins to acknowledge that nobody's getting her out of jail. Nobody, where's Chad? If she's so special that she's queen of the 144,000, where's the end of the world earthquake that was supposed to happen in July? So little by little, she's having her movement restricted. I guarantee you they were throwing antipsychotic medications at her within a week. And little by little, her brain chemistry begins to normalize, and each passing day, she becomes more rational, and she's engaging in more accurate reality testing. And so she looks at July and she thinks, well, they're going to be sorry because now we're going to have the big earthquake. And Zulema, remember, Zulema is the one who conjures earthquakes. Remember? So, yeah, Arizona, what's the deal with Zulema? Like, why are you so convinced that little hugger is innocent of anything? Because when I look at this, there's fingerprints everywhere. You know what I mean? So as Lori is receiving her medication, she's in a controlled environment, and they're giving her medications that are helping to calm her and quiet her, and her chemistry is normalizing. She's having more accurate reality testing, and she knows that July is the big day, the big one. I think it was July 10th, maybe. And it doesn't happen. And that was probably the big one. That was probably the big test that was going to convince her that there was no way she'd been crazy all this time, that by God, she is special, by God, she is important, and by God, she is going to be the wife of, the prophet. For God's sake, they were already calling him the prophet. And when July 10th came and went, that was probably the beginning of her realizing what a terrible mistake, how badly everything had gone wrong. Now, there was a lot to regret, right? There was an awful lot of things that happened from all of the court cases involving her children, these crazy accusations throughout history. I don't know if y'all hear Kitty Dog. I tell you what I'm going to do. Will y'all give me 3 minutes to get her outside and I'll be back? Otherwise, she's going to stand there and do that for 20 minutes. Okay. So let's just take a little break. And I think what I can do is, let me find a quick, just a minute, Kitty Dog. I'm going to take you outside, but let me turn on a quick little video here. Hold on. Okay, I'll be right back. Hold on just a minute. I'm going to start this.
They got into the thing, and he's hitting him with the bat, and they're on the ground, like grappling around or whatever. And then, it was all
and he
quickly.
And he hit your brother with the bat while they were grappling and stuff.
Yes, he was hitting him with the bat, like swinging the bat, back and forth, and they were kind of like on the ground, and I was like freaking out trying to go around, knowing JJ was in the car.
Yeah.
Right? And so then he got up and he had the bat like this towards me, and I was going around the other side to try to just get out of his range where he couldn't hit me. And then I had told Tylee, because she was on the ground, because after he took the bat from her, she fell back. And so I told her, I was like, go get in the car with JJ. Like, I don't want JJ coming in to the house, and I wanted her out of the way. I wanted the kids out of the way, whatever this fight was going to be. And then,
do you remember what your husband or your brother were saying or yelling during all of this? If they were at all?
Just kind of, get off me, ow, or whatever. They were like, don't talk to my niece about it, whatever. Like, it was, I don't remember specifics, but they were kind of in the heat of it. I don't think there was many words that I remember.
So Tylee goes outside.
Yeah, she was outside.
And then what happened?
Then they got up from that, and my brother had stepped back, I guess, and then Charles was coming with me at the bat and yelling at me to give him his phone still, because I had it in my hand. It was all really quickly. And then when I went around kind of in the circle, then my brother was there.
When you said when you were going around and he was coming at you with the bat, how was he holding the bat?
Just like that, like backwards.
Like he was swinging it backwards? He would have done like
he would have swung it backwards at me, not frontward.
Okay, yeah.
He was a professional baseball player.
Okay.
So it wasn't a good idea for Tyler to get out of that.
Probably not
he played semi.
Okay. Well, so she's acting out. First of all, I would not say this is manic. Okay. I would definitely go with hypomanic or the potential for hypomanic, and she's just very controlled, right? But there's a couple of things here that she does that would make me say, this is out of the ordinary, right? Okay, so she's talking about her husband who was a baseball player in his he was paid to play baseball. He's a very strong guy, like, kind of like the whole Barry Morphew build. He's still, even though it's an older guy, he had definitely continued to lift weights and things like that. And considering he was very accustomed to, knocking the hell out of baseball, a baseball bat in Charles Vallow's hands is a deadly weapon, like to kill someone. And during the interview of Alex Cox, you can see on the back of his head where he supposedly was hit by Charles Vallow with a baseball bat. And really, if that was true, you probably would have seen an indentation in his skull, and there would have been enormous, copious amounts of blood. There would have been serious bruising already that would have been easily discernible on his partially, I guess he was fully bald. But instead, there was just this tiny little trickle of blood that wasn't even like 2 inches long, I think, 2, maybe 3 inches long, where the blood wasn't even dripping. It just kind of rolled out a little bit, and then it began to coagulate. And what have we said talking about the Suzanne Morphew probability of a mountain lion, taking her down? Well, the mountain lion's going to go straight for her head and throat, and the head is the most vascular area on the body. How many of you have ever picked a scab off of your face, or it bleeds like you've just stuck a knife into your skin, and that's just a surface level, abrasion to pick off a scab. So if you've ever been in an operating theater when they were doing brain surgery, they, the cut where they open up the skull, that's the amount of blood is horrifying, but then there's not very much blood in the brain. But anyway, so she's describing this violent potential act that supposedly, Charles Vallow is hitting her brother on the back of the head, him not paying attention, hits him on the back of the head as hard as he can, and all he got was just a little drop of blood that traveled down maybe a couple inches. But watch what happens to her. She's acting it out, right? She's going, oh no, it was a backhand. She's acting it out, but then watch what happens after she says to the lady, oh yeah, and he was a professional baseball player, he would have hurt Alex. So watch her reaction.
Just throwing it backwards at me, not frontward.
Okay, yeah.
He was a professional baseball player.
Okay.
So it wasn't a good idea for Charlie to get out of that.
Now then, was that funny? Is that funny that he was swinging a baseball bat? No, it's not funny. But not only is she inappropriately laughing, but look at her body language. I mean, she thinks that's a hoot. And it took her a little bit of time to get herself, back into her role. I don't think she played the role very well. Actually, not well at all. When I say that she had no level of empathy at all, I'm not exaggerating. About the only real emotion you got was this mirth, just this joy, just this kind of laughing, chuckling, giggling. But her husband is dead, right? Immediately dead. And supposedly she watched when this happened. So she had to tell Tylee. JJ was in the car asking questions. What was that noise? And she went back in the house, and then he would have been laying there in a puddle of blood. So I'm going to ask you this. Does this look even remotely normal? No, it is not. It isn't. It doesn't even come close to normal. It's definitely more typical of, like I said, a manic or hypomanic type of reaction. Hold on, there's another part I want you to look at. Hold on. Where'd it go? Maybe it was back over here. Yeah, there it is right there. Okay, now watch her body language. It's really peculiar. I think it was anticipation that caused her to get into this curious pose that she held for a little while. But watch her body language.
To see if they were in there okay. I didn't want them coming back in the house when all that was going on. And
her hands, you know, the way she's holding her hands as she's talking, she's acting like she's got something on her hands, like her hands are dirty, like there's something on them, like if you ended up getting mud on your hands and you were trying to get to the bathroom to open the, you know, to turn on the water and not get mud everywhere. It looks like she's got something nasty on her hands, and that's how she's kind of holding them. And I find that to be a little bit interesting.
He got it, just went into mama.
All right. So she's holding her hands in a very funny way.
I had gone around to the kitchen to get away from him, and so back around. So I don't know if he went in the house.
I didn't, so I'm at a little bit of a disadvantage.
Yeah, so I didn't see the shot. I heard it, and then I came back around and I saw that he was on the ground.
Okay.
And I was freaking out. Yeah. And so I was just freaking out, and it just.
I was just freaking out. I was just freaking out.
Went into mama, and I'm like, I've got to go to get JJ to school. I've got to get to the kids. I got to get to the kids. Mm-hmm. And so I just went outside and to see if they were in there okay. I didn't want them coming back in the house when all that was going on. And got JJ in the car, and he was trying to come in. Mm-hmm. And Tylee was like looking at me with like the crazy eyes, like what just happened. And I told her to get in the car and we're going to take JJ to school. Mm-hmm. And I just left.
When you came back in and you saw him.
Isn't that strange how long she's holding her arms like that? Have you ever seen anybody sit like that? I have literally been trying to imagine. I've been watching people. I don't think I have ever seen anybody sit like that for so long.
On the ground, where was your brother? Did you see him where he was at?
So
yeah, he was.
It's such a curious. It's like her thoughts are completely disconnected from her body. It is very strange.
Right in front of him.
Okay.
Like it all happened very quickly.
Right.
I feel like I was there because I was right there in like a second.
Is she hyper aware of her hands? Do her hands feel funny for some reason? Do they feel unusual for some reason? The reason that this looks curious to me is because I'm thinking to myself, if she's prone to these brief psychotic episodes, whenever there is a period, whenever there's something that happens that provokes like an extreme emotion, then maybe maybe she, without really recognizing it or realizing it, maybe she is having some sort of sensory anomaly that feels curious. She is holding her hands like they're dirty or like they're wet. She's holding them in a way that the body language is quite peculiar to everything else. She just seems really detached from the fact that her brother just killed her husband. I don't see consciousness of guilt, right? You got to remember they were praying for this man's death. Well, not for his death, but for the evil entity, you know. So where is her pretending to grieve? Like, if she's not surprised that he's dead, then wouldn't she, if she was really in her normal mind, wouldn't she be aware that she needed to pretend like she had concern? Sort of like Barry Morphew, you know, sliding out of his truck, and oh, Georgie Porgy's there to give him a hug. And where is it? Where's my wife? Oh, I'm sorry. He didn't say wife. He's, where's the bicycle? Where is it? As he walked right straight to where the bicycle was. Okay. Lori doesn't seem to have awareness that she's supposed to be upset. She doesn't seem to have any connection at all to what a normal reaction would be to such an enormous tragedy. And you may say, well, she hated Charles Vallow. She didn't want to be with him. Okay, I'm willing to accept that. But where's her concern for JJ and Tylee, who just experienced something really traumatic? Where's their concern? And that she doesn't seem to have it. The only thing she really demonstrates here is this hypomanic type of laughter and kind of this disconnect between a topic and the kind of increased level of mood that she's demonstrating, and then this very strange body positioning and the way she holds her palms as if there's something on them.
Later, like,
Okay.
I just went around the kitchen to get away from him.
Did your brother say anything to you at all? Do you remember?
No, we were both just in shock.
Okay.
Like, it was just I didn't say anything. I went out with the kids just to check on them first, and I was gonna come back in maybe, but I didn't. I was like, I just have to get him to school.
Okay.
And call the police, you know.
Laughing again. And I'm quite interested in this position that she seems to be driven by the goal of, we got to get JJ to school. JJ's got to be in school. JJ needs to be in school. My question would be, why, Lori? Is that part of the alibi? Is that part of the plan? Is that he should be able to be in school at a certain time that gets you away from the death of your husband? Well, no, I couldn't have done it because I was taking my kid to school. I didn't do it. But I was sure she didn't do it.
Whatever.
Did anybody say did you or your brother say anything at some point about calling the police or calling 911? Do you remember?
Yeah, he called me.
Okay.
And he said, are you taking JJ to school?
Uh-huh.
And I said, yeah, we need to call the police. And he said, okay.
Okay. So he called you when you didn't come back inside, basically?
Right.
Okay.
Because I was like...
Because Alex knew the plan too, right? Alex knew we got to kill him, but then you got to immediately get JJ to school to establish a timeline that you aren't here.
In the car for a minute.
And again, how long has she been sitting there with her hands hanging down? At this point, the blood is beginning to pool. She's got to be feeling it, right? It's very peculiar.
And then I was like, what do I do?
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't want JJ to go inside, and I didn't
Okay.
know what to do. And Tylee was freaking out. I was trying to get them away from the scene.
Understandable.
Mm-hmm.
And you may not know this, so, because I know you heard the shot, do you know at what point your brother had the gun? Do you know if he had it when they got in their first fight, or did he have to go get it, or do you know that at all?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
And you notice how she's rubbing her
And do you remember
her
if
leg?
you ever heard your brother?
That's self-soothing behavior. Okay. So is there some in the immediacy after Charles Vallow is killed, does there look like there's some hypomanic behavior? Absolutely. And when you listen to Zach's interview, he definitely describes the behaviors that are not expected and in line with normal behavior. He even says that. And here's another part to the whole genetic, the borderline 1, and these would be schizoaffective disorder and borderline 1 or borderline psychosis. These have a heavy genetic component. They're very uncommon. They're rare to run across. Certainly they're there. But almost always when you speak to one of these people and you kind of go back through their history, there's other family members that have experienced similar types of problems. And it makes sense because it's a brain-based illness. It's not, oh, well, when she gets moody, she just gets cray-cray. It's not that. It's like, if you have diabetes, it's because your body isn't managing insulin properly. There's a physiological explanation for why things are going wrong in the case of schizoaffective disorder and bipolar. It's a physiological problem. It's not a mental health kind of or a mood related type thing. It's actually a physical systems breakdown. And it's prompted by an extreme reaction, physiologically, extreme emotion. And it doesn't have to be a negative emotion. It can be extreme excitement of happiness, like winning the Oscar could throw somebody into a manic episode if they are schizoaffective, untreated, and they win an Oscar. Right? Or win the lottery. That could be enough. The physiological reaction to utter excitement could be enough to throw you into a manic period. And if it's severe mania, then you can have what looks to be like just a true psychotic event, because it is psychosis. Okay. Now then, too bad the police did not believe Charles. It would have saved a lot of lives. It was so many lives would have been saved. And there had been episodes throughout the years. Don't forget about all the different court cases, interviews with CPS. Lori herself had been through multiple psychological evaluations for determination of custody and such. And these professionals out of Austin, Texas, they literally went on record. They were interviewed and said, our recommendation to the court was that this woman had no business raising small children. We said that. And they did that after retirement and when she had been arrested for all these murders. And, I thought to myself, when they did that, I thought, that is real. You have forgotten about your code of ethics. But, I think we can appreciate that they were outraged, that they had tried to do their part and warn the court and give the court their expert opinions after a proper evaluation. And if the judge isn't going to listen to you, the judge is not going to listen to you. And here they are. They were so disturbed all these years by how it all played out. And they felt genuine concern for the welfare of Tylee and Joseph Ryan, and not Joseph, Colby Ryan. And then here they are 2 decades later, and this baby is dead in the most heinous way imaginable. They were outraged. That's why they threw their code of ethics out the window. They were outraged. So this woman used I think she used her looks because we can agree she's very beautiful when she's all fixed up and everything. I think she used her looks, and I think she used her manipulative skills that are often associated with narcissists, and she schmoozed people throughout her lifetime to continue to wreak havoc and do damage. And my question is, where did she learn all that? And that would lead you then to her family of origin, right? Now then, so if we consider Lori, all right, and this problem of being incompetent to stand trial, and now here we are, we're back to competency again, then of all the potential possibilities that could have been taken place, that a psychologist or a psychologist would make the case that she was not fit to stand trial, this is the combination that, for me, does seem most likely to explain what she has been through. And the reason that I want to say that is this. Again, she remains in a highly controlled environment, meaning they're giving her medicine with a diagnosis like SchizoAffective Disorder and Bipolar I. With that type of diagnosis, her medications are life-saving, right? They keep her fairly normal. And if she goes off of them, then she reverts back to her disease state, which means she's going to be having psychotic episodes and periods of mania, and it's a mess. So they'll be giving her medications. They'll make sure that she continues to take it. And she's been in jail for a very long time. So the spell of old Chins has been broken. She hasn't been around. She hasn't been around Shad Daybell. They hadn't been, making whoopee and all that. So all that manipulation is out, and it's just her and her memories and the new medication that makes her feel regular. Do you want to feel normal with the realization that you got so crazy that you actually had your children murdered? Do you want to go through that experience? I don't want to go through that experience. So as she's sitting in prison and they're medicating her now, or she was in the hospital, now they'll be transporting her back to the prison. She's coming to terms with all that she's been a part of, what she sanctioned, what she made happen, what she even facilitated, I think. She knows what she did. At this point, personality disorder or not, I don't care. Just the reality of being accurate in their reality testing. She knows what she did. She knows that the two kids are gone. She knows that Tammy Daybell's gone and Charles Vallow is gone. And it does look like, I'm going to say it, it does look suspiciously like maybe she was involved in Joseph Ryan's death. And Alex Cox. Strychnine is a poison that makes the body have blood clots. Chins is a total goober. No doubt, Scarlett. Yeah. The Chadster, a.k.a. Chins. Okay. So, she's taking the medication and now she has to live with herself, is what I'm saying. And it's going to be a nightmare. The trauma is real. And it doesn't matter if she's a narcissist. None of that matters for this moment. The trauma of knowing what she did, especially with the two kids, it's horrifying. And then to realize that I'm Lori Vallow, thinking she's entitled to $1 million that she never earned, that she's taken steps to kill people with the one intent of getting their money, feeling so special that she should live in Hawaii, and that's her God-given right, without working, this is a woman who believed that she was worthy of luxury just by her simple existence, that she didn't have to do a damn thing to make that luxury appear. Melanie Gibb talked about how Lori surrounded herself with really beautiful things. That was like one of her primary motivating factors, was the luxurious things in life, right? Now she's going to have the realization there'll never be another day of luxury. They will never be another hour-long bath in a hot tub, bubble bath. She's getting it. It's coming. And to me, I'll say this, I think she's definitely horrified about JJ and Tylee. I think there's enough history to show that she was a good mother. She was a good mother until she got involved with Chins. She was a good mother. So was she open to suggestion? Yes, absolutely. Was she hungry for power and for feeling special? 100%. And to be taken by people like Jason Mao, Chad Daybell, this Little Bear, Julie Rowe, this group of people that are actively, I'm going to say it, they're snake oil salesmen. Those people that are flocking to those, prepper kind of convention weekends. Oh, we're gonna live in the backwoods like the old Wild West and have your tents and your survival food ready to go, and we're all going to be together, and it's going to be like it was back in the good old days. This is every bit as sinister as Jim Jones and the Kool-Aid. Nobody wants to say that. Everybody wants to say, oh, no. It's just a small, quaint little group of people involved here. It was just Lori and Chad's little necklace, and, Alex, the avenging angel, and that's all. Really? Who believes that? Honestly, do you really believe that they were able to kill how many people? With just the three of them? And continue to do these strange podcasts and all this money and all these weird marriages. Do you really, like in your heart, do you really believe that Lori and Chad and Alex are having their own little cult, just the three of them? Remember, Zulema herself says it's her job to conjure earthquakes. Remember that? Melanie Gibb, little Miss Sweet, little Melanie, I've never done anything wrong. And these people that talk about us online, they're just so sick. Melanie, you're confused about what sick is. The reason that people on YouTube and the nightly news are talking about you and Chad and Lori is because what you guys were engaged in was an abomination, not of the Bible. It was an abomination to humanity. To murder a little boy and his sister in the most heinous fashion imaginable. To divorce your husband that you have been in a happy marriage with a lot of children. You leave him, somebody tries to kill him, and he's got a nice insurance policy, life insurance policy. And then within 2 weeks, you end up marrying a guy who is up to his ears in this weird Rexburg crap. These people are all in on this. I believe it in my heart. I believe it in my heart. And I wasn't convinced until I listened to the interview that Lauren on Hidden True Crime, the interview that she did with Eric J. Smith. And as I listened to that interview, I kept saying, Yeah, but Eric, that's exactly what Melanie Gibbs said. They said while they were praying for the deaths of these people. Eric, your belief system, you can sit there and you can tell the interviewer all day long that you weren't like Chad and you had different beliefs than Chad and your way was different than Chad, because what you're saying describes exactly what the hell was going on down there in Arizona. But I'll tell you what I do think. I do think there was the agreement that if they got caught with all of these dead and missing spouses and children, that there had to be a fall guy. That someone had to be pointed the finger at and said, there's your crazy person. Now go away and leave us and our prepper culting alone. Leave us alone. We had nothing to do with Chad Daybell. We had nothing to do with Lori Vallow. We had nothing to do with Alex. Go away. Alex told Dilemma, I'm their fall guy. Is there, THEIR, a big group with people like Jason Mao and Little Bear and Julie Rowe and any number of Mike Shroud? How many people are in there? How many of them needed a fall guy? Because when you listen to Julie Rowe and you listen to Little Bear, there's an awful lot of talk about what Eric J. Smith is talking a lot about are the multiple probations. And that with the realization that you would have had other spouses in other lives, that opened up the door for people to begin to flirt with other people's husbands and wives. And Little Bear himself says that when they would go to these conventions or whatever they called them, that people began to leave and go to hotel rooms with other people's spouses. This is not 3 people. These were conventions with hundreds and thousands of people, that not 100,000, but hundreds, or I should have said thousands. Loads of people there. Thousands. That's right, Hazel. Thousands. And they all, according to these various interviews and conversations, if you've been following them and listened to them and kind of get a really big, good feel for what it was like to be inside of the large group, many of them talk about how it became acceptable to have sex with someone else's wife or husband if Chad and Julie came and told you that this person used to be your wife or used to be your husband in another life. They came to Eric J. Smith, according to Eric J. Smith, and said, oh, you were Isaiah in another life. Shut up. Why is it that they all had to be big players in Constantine's Holy Bible? Why is that? How come none of them were like the guy that cleaned out the barn? Why is that? How come none of them are like the cripple that, was on the street begging for food? Why were they always like these people that were named in the Bible after Constantine's, culling of stories? Why? Because you're full of bullshit. Because what you're saying is nonsensical. It's silly. And yet, how many people did they have come into these conventions and these prepping things where they would like teach people, like Melanie Gibbs? She was in it up to her eyeballs. She was teaching people how to do electricity, when there's living out on the backwoods. And I'm really hoping and praying, and here I'm going to get back on topic to my point, is that if what Lori was dealing with was schizoaffective disorder and Bipolar I, and that she did in fact develop a bipolar psychosis due to the trauma of actually being arrested, coming to those slow realizations she had murdered her children, coming to the even more horrifying realization that she would never sleep again in a heavenly bed by Marriott. Okay. That from now on, there'd never be a long hot bath ever again. I think that the thing that best would explain that process would be the psychotic illness, and that the medications that would be prescribed would be the type of medication that is going to make her better, whether she wants to be better or not. Because it's going to correct the physiological deficiency. And so as she normalizes and her executive functioning and frontal lobe and all, as all of that begins to clear, and she's becoming more normal in cognition and reality testing, she's having all of this realization of the horror and the nightmare that she created. Now, interpersonality stage left. Okay? So here's Lori. She gets it. She's been a monster. And it's made her crazy. But they give her medication. She gets calm. Her brain, her thoughts begin to clear. And physiologically, neurologically, things are working properly again. But she still has personality disorder. And part of that personality disorder is she needs to be loved. She needs to be admired. And she's not stupid. She knows that people are not going to love and admire her if she kills little children. So she has a problem, right? Not only is she overwhelmed by guilt, but she needs someone to love her. So how does she manage this? Well, what if she blames it on someone else? What if she takes the position, I'm not the ship's captain, and I am not going down with this ship alone? Imagine the fallout. Imagine the fallout. Somebody said to me one time, are you not scared to death to say Jason Mao's name? Like, does that scare you to death to talk about him in your video? No. And the reason that it doesn't scare me is, number one, I'm not making any accusations per se. I'm just stating the obvious, what a lot of people are thinking, and that is, Jason, you seem to be in a lot of places that Melanie Gibb or Lori Vallow was at. Weird places, like right around the corner from Charles Vallow's house the night that he gets locked out. You seem to be connected to some very strange prepper stuff. You seem to have some strange ideas about who you are, with no qualms whatsoever, dressing up like a warrior, a Roman warrior, and putting it out all over the internet. You know, it's okay to draw the picture that's going to be the front of your book. But for you to actually put on the clothes as a grown man, and that's the cover of your book, it's very worrisome in terms of what were you thinking? You can go back through the old podcast and some of the old flyers where they were advertising for these get-togethers and whatnot. Jason Mao is everywhere in this. There is a group of about 11 people that seem to be really big money kind of people, powerful kind of people in their own right. We're even talking about Mitt Romney's sister was at some of these things As I'm talking about as a VIP. So there's this is not just Lori and Chad. I'm certain of it. I don't know if Jason Mao did anything. That's not my place to know. I wouldn't have any way of knowing. I don't know any of these people face it forward. But what I do know is this. In order to get Lori Vallow from a place of being kind of a goofy stay-at-home mom who's, you know, driving her kids around to all of their different stuff and being a good mom, how do you go from that to being a crazy, murderous, homicidal maniac of children? There's a lot that had to have happened. There was a lot of manipulation, a lot of conditioning that went on. There was a lot of reward. Jason Mao brought Lori Vallow into the podcast crap. Remember? And what was it that Zach said? Zach said, yeah, we got in the car, you know, and my Aunt Lori's listening to these weird podcasts. It's weird. No, Zach, you're wrong, because for Jason Mao, he took her by her hand and led her straight into the podcast being a manipulator of others. So someone must have manipulated her first. And what was it Jason Mao says in that one podcast? I saw you, Lori, and I knew who you were. You were one of us. You are a collector, Lori. You collect souls like we do. That's an exact quote by Jason Mao. That's a very strange worldview, that you're a collector of souls, and that when you saw Lori, you instantly knew her. Remember, they met in the temple. So if it took medication to get Lori standing upright back on her feet and dealing with the real world and not some false some false delusion that had been fed to her by these people, to get her back to being Lori Cox, right? It took medication and a lot of therapy and a lot of exercise. I mean, they were working really hard. They were giving her good nutrition. They were doing fun things for her to laugh, because when you laugh, some really critical neurological things happen. They worked really hard to get her healthy again. It is not easy to pull somebody out of that type of total breakdown. But the medication works. It's good, right? So here she is no longer Lori team player. She is not. This is a woman who has experienced basically the end of her life. There is nothing left for her. It's all gone. And she was once a good mom. So as she sits in that jail cell, as she sits there, and she knows that she's going, Melanie Gibb has spilt the beans. And don't think that what's that? Is his name Abercrombie? Is that the name of her lawyer now? Abernathy? No, Abercrombie. It's Abercrombie. Don't think that Abercrombie hasn't told her that Melanie Gibb has told everybody that Lori did this all by herself. That Lori and Chad did this. Lori and Chad, they didn't have anything to do with it. Melanie is the most innocent human being on the planet. Okay, well, you know, your husband was a real priest in Australia, and he just left his wife and children, just poof, and went where? To be who? And you're saying he's not part of y'all? Okay. Because his behavior seems to exactly match the behavior of Melanie Pawlowski. They were all doing it. They were all doing it. They were all the same behavior of leaving their spouse and families to be with the people that Chad handpicked. Melanie Pawlowski was supposed to be married to David Warwick. And Melanie was like, ugh, no, he's very old. It's very strange that there's so many people that there's evidence that they were all also engaging in these very unusual reorganizations of their lives. It's very strange. So Lori, medicated, rational, grieving, broken Lori. What is something she might do for atonement? What is something that she might do to try to set up a scenario that would remove the responsibility of the deaths of children from her hands? What's something that Lori could do with her newfound sanity? What's something that she could do to help her mom and dad and brother forgive her? She could blow the proverbial whistle. There you go. She could name names. I honestly think, I'll tell you this, Justice for Summer. I believe that John Pryor is terrified of her turning on Chad. I bet you he has been working Chad, trying to convince him to turn on her, and I think Chad is gonna turn on her. I think when the defense, when it's their turn to get up and present their case, I think Chad is going to be an even bigger victim than JJ, if you can imagine that, abomination. He is going to paint Chad Daybell like this poor, naive, inexperienced, sexually manipulated, sexually assaulted little boy by this horrible, evil Jezebel. That Lori, the Jezebel, took this good and fine and decent man. Exhibit A will be, of course, his children in their weird, culty kind of, look how old fashioned we are. Do you want to be a Mormon? No, actually, I don't. After seeing what all of these people easily accept as reality, no. Something's clearly happening. Something's clearly happening in this type of Mormon lifestyle that made this group of people open to some of these crazy ideas. I'm not saying that the Mormons caused it. I'm not saying that all the Mormons do this. Please, that's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying there was something about this group, this whole Rexburg group of people, something about them were wide open to the bastardization of the Mormon religion. Something. What was it? And they're not the only ones. I mean, you go back to the whole white salamander, what do you call it? Fraud. Jodi Arias, you know, I'm firmly convinced that what happened to Travis was an assassination, a religious backed assassination, because he had committed infidelity and sexual wantonness. And there is doctrine that says, you know, for atonement, you cut their throat. And of course, that's not something that's happening in real life today, but it was common in the old days, as was human sacrifice and other things, right? And so that's what it looks like to me. It looks like to me this group of people took the current day Mormon religion, which supports people, it gives the community identity, it's their spiritual baseline, right? The structure for how they see themselves in the bigger picture of humanity. And all those things are healthy. But this group, with these highly influential people at the top that were being handpicked, Jason Mal handpicked Lori. Oh, the minute I saw you, I knew you were one of us. You are a gatherer. She was handpicked by him because of her personality. And boy, she got out there, didn't she? She got out there and began manipulating. She had these beliefs, you know, that she could be justified in killing Joseph Ryan because she had asked him once, twice, 3 times. Bible says after 3 times, blah, 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 right? So if Lori is medicated and now she's thinking clearly and she's horrified by her behavior and what she's done, she's recognizing the extent of what happened with her at the helm, basically, and how absurd it was to believe in portals and other husbands and wives. And she gets to a point where she's thinking clearly again, but the personality disorder remains, of course. And she needs love now more than ever. She needs acceptance now more than ever. But nobody's going to love her. Nobody's going to accept her because she is the modern day monster. So how does she get out of that? I think she gets out of that by telling. I think she gets out of it by talking, by saying, I didn't do this. Another person did this. Another person did this. They did this. They put us up to this. They wanted this. You know, Melanie Gibb talked about the meetings that they would have at different people's houses, including Zulema had one at her house, where they would hold hands and they would pray and they were trying to get these souls out of people and whatnot, right? And when Melanie Gibb tells the story, it's like these were prayers of love, you know, like me and you pray, right? I want to pray for health and peace and positive events. That is not what they were praying for. They were praying for the deaths of the people that had become inconvenient in their fantasy world. They were praying for death. Imagine that. They were praying for the people in their lives to die. And they were doing it together as a group. Wrap your head around that. And now they have a problem because crazy Lori is now medicated. And she needs somebody to love her. And the best way to get back into the graces, the good graces of her mom and Summer, her Summer Shiflett, her sister, her dad, her remaining brother, Zach, the best way to do, Colby, the best way to do that is to say, hey, y'all, I was victimized. I'm a victim. Let me tell you the story. Let me tell you what they said to us. Let me tell you what was supposed to happen. Right now, today, there's a lot of people between Arizona and Idaho and Oklahoma, Utah. There's a lot of people that are not happy. Today was not a happy day. They did not want to hear that Lori Vallow is medicated. That's the last thing they wanted to hear. So this is going to be a circus. This is going to be the War of the Roses. That's how bad it's going to be. So, we just hang on, and what you should expect is the unexpected. Because I do believe in my heart that there were some people that were after power that weren't crazy. They're just manipulative and mean and craving power. And I think those people are at the top of the food chain. All right. One last thing I want to say. Okay. So, schizoaffective disorder. Let me just kind of go through this very quickly. Schizoaffective disorder it's a mood problem. It's a physiological based problem. It's an illness, just like diabetes. There's a problem with the insulin balance. Well, in schizoaffective disorder, there's a problem with neurotransmitters, primarily dopamine, serotonin, and norepinephrine. And this mood disorder expresses itself through symptoms of schizophrenia. If it is the bipolar type of schizoaffective disorder, or what some people just call it bipolar psychosis. But the bipolar type of schizoaffective disorder is episodes of mania and then periods of depression. And if the mania is severe, then the person can have perceptual and sensory anomalies that create hallucinations, delusions, poor reality testing, loss of identity, some dissociation sometimes can happen, that kind of thing. But there's also the depressive type, and I alluded to that even though most people want to say, no, it's primarily associated with the manic phase, there are episodes where depression can get so bad that you can have a brief psychotic disorder. But again, you got a time restriction on the diagnosis of brief psychosis, and that is 1 month. So symptoms can't last longer than a month. So, even if you say depressive type, are you really just trying to name, a psychotic type depression? I tend toward the belief that if someone is having bipolar psychosis, it's coming off the heels of the mania, because that's your dopamine. People with schizoaffective disorder need assistance and support with daily functioning. This is a serious, serious condition. And it's also a fairly rare condition. There are not many people that have true schizoaffective disorder. But when you do have it, it's a very, very, very difficult condition. Basically, if you're neurotypical and you have a mood disorder, well, when you get depressed, you may lay around in the bed and cry and maybe withdraw from people. Or if you're male or a kid, then you may express more anger and irritability, but eventually that goes away, right? But people with schizoaffective disorder, if they get depressed, or they get anxious, then they may, begin to see their soup come out of the bowl in cubes. And if your perception is so distorted that you see liquid as cubes, imagine you trying to keep up with your bills and go to work, and, it just can't be. So schizoaffective disorder is a serious, serious physical illness. And they do require, people that are experiencing that do require someone helping them with just getting through the day. Typical of schizophrenia or other psychotic situations, they do experience delusions. And that is what we're witnessing with Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell. They were experiencing significant delusions, false, fixed beliefs. They constructed a world that they were convinced was real, but the evidence in the immediate environment didn't seem to matter to them. That's what we call poor reality testing. People that are in a well-organized delusion, they don't have the ability to look around and say, well, I know that I'm queen of the 144,000, but I'm still having to drive myself and go get food and cook it for the kids. And I still get BO and I still have to blow my nose. They just don't, they live firmly in this alternate world that they create. And that is what a delusion is. But here's where people are falling short. It wasn't just Lori and Chad that were delusional. Julie Rowe is possibly delusional. I listened to one of her talks that she did. I actually paid and did one of her online things. She believes that she flies through the air at night from planet to planet. Like, she believes that. It's my opinion. She believes that she can do that. She believes that she's a spiritual warrior visiting other times and places and conditions. She's not the only one that is delusional. Go listen to Hidden True Crime and her interview of Eric Smith and listen to what he is saying. He believes this nonsense of multiple probations, and he believes it. There were many people that were delusional in this thing, not just Lori and Chad, not just Alex, Zulema and Melanie Gibb are taking the position that they thought it was all nonsensical, that they partook, they were a part of it, but they didn't believe anything that was being said. Really? So you having good reality testing, being rational and logical and calm, you went and held hands and prayed for the death of other people, and you thought that it was a game? How old are you? No, you believed it. You believe it now. Hallucinations are a sensory disruption where you hear things that other people can't hear. You see things that other people can't see. Sometimes in epilepsy or migraine headaches, people can even have like olfactory hallucinations where they smell something that's not really there. The brain is pretending that there's a smell. People that are experiencing a psychotic episode, whether you're schizophrenia or it's schizoaffective or it's just a brief psychotic reaction, they can have impaired communication, including being able to speak where their words rhyme. Like they're not trying to make them rhyme, they just come out that way. They can also mimic things that like aphasia, where it's just a jumbled word, just a jumbly kind of clanging noise, just a jumbled mess of unconnected words, or an attempt to be rational, or to attempt to be fluent, but then choosing the wrong word for something. You want to say horse, but then you say the word toenail. So impaired communication and speech, and that can include things that would be associated with traumatic brain injury. It's fascinating to see. As it's the rhyming for me is one of the coolest things I've ever seen. It's the second coolest thing neurologically that I've ever seen, is someone clanging. They can demonstrate bizarre and unusual behavior, like believing that they're going to be queen of the 144,000, like they're believing that they can conjure earthquakes. So you've got some explaining to do, Ms. Pastenis. Why did you think you could make earthquakes happen? Because you can't. No one can. It's a function of the gravitational pull and the plates of the earth and the molten lava and what's happening with the sun. Why, Zulema, are you saying I've got to go conjure up some earthquakes, Zulema? And Chad and Lori believe that it's okay to kill Tammy because the earthquake's going to be coming soon and nobody will know that they're the ones that did it. Zulema, you're the one that is making earthquakes, and now you want to tell the investigators that you didn't believe any of it? Is that really what you think? Because Lori is going to talk, Zulema. She's going to talk because she's medicated and she's thinking clearly now, and she is miserable. Along with the bizarre and unusual behavior, people with schizoaffective disorder are experiencing symptoms of depression that include an intense feeling of emptiness, feelings of sadness or guilt, feeling abjectly worthless. These very low points are mixed in with periods of mania or manic mood, which is associated or expresses itself through increased energy. Very often they don't sleep for 1, 2, 3 days or more, and they do things that are completely out of character for themselves, like going and taking your life savings and buying 20 houses that are no good, or killing your kids, making sacrifice of your children to the gods. These are clearly significant disruptions. Therefore, you would guess that, of course, it's going to impair their occupational, their ability to work, go to school, maintain regular friendships and family relationships. It gets all blown to hell and back. And then one of the last stages is managing personal care. They don't really bathe, and their physical appearance will very often change dramatically. Again, suicide also can become a big part of schizoaffective disorder. Again, but that's normally when they're coming out of the depressive cycle, and they're recognizing how much damage they've done to their life, how difficult it will be to try to recover. Risk factors for schizoaffective disorder. Like I said, there's a heavy genetic component. And so if you have a parent or a sibling, a first line genetic relative, then you're at an increased risk of having either schizoaffective disorder, schizophrenia, or bipolar disorder. And again, I think that there's a good connection between this idea of bipolar I actually being a schizoaffective reaction. Stressful events may trigger symptoms, and that doesn't have to be negative stressful events. Very, very happy events can also trigger these episodes. And another thing that can definitely trigger these episodes is taking mind-altering drugs, which worsen this underlying disorder of perceptual and sensory anomalies. And, going down to South America, were we picking up a little ayahuasca, Alex? Zulema? Was ayahuasca involved in getting these people to believe these things and to believe that they had gotten into a portal and traveled somewhere else? How did you convince these people that they had these powers? That's what I want to know. Were there psychedelics involved in these weekends where these people all got together as preppers? Was some small, tiny amount of psychedelics being put into their food or their drinks, and then they were convinced that they were having a divine, experience? It's a real question. Something happened to a large group of people that they bought into bizarre ideas like praying for people to die because they were zombified. And can we be honest here? Sean Little Bear, American Indian, mescaline. Sure, the ayahuasca, the mushrooms, it's easily achieved. In people that are on psychedelics, a low dose psychedelic, they're wide open to suggestion. So you give them a little bit of mushroom, and then you tell them that they're going to be queen of the 144,000, and guess what happens? Melanie Pulowski says that Chad made a portal for her, and that when she got in the portal, that she went to Hawaii to see Lori. How did that happen? Why would she believe that happened? Because she was on psychedelics and she was told, you're going to get in that portal and you're going to go and you and Lori are going to connect in Hawaii, but it's going to be a little different. It won't be like your physical body's there because you're really there in spirit, but you'll be together and you'll be able to see each other and talk. It's the power of suggestion. I was suspicious of Alex going into Mexico for prescriptions. I don't think he was getting prescriptions. I think he was getting poison and possibly some type of psychedelics or the family is happy Lori is going to trial, and so are we. You can bet your butt we are happy that she is well and that she is medicated and she is standing trial. Yeah, I totally think she's going to talk, Teresa. She's going to, I'm telling you, that personality disorder is working on her right now. And she is in a panic thinking about never being loved again. I'm telling you. She has got to figure out a way to have her family love her again. And the only way she is going to be able to do that is to point her finger at someone else. So, you know, you guys at the top of the food chain over there at preparing the people, I hope you guys didn't tell Lori too much. All right. I thought he was getting something bad. Jalima said that's where he went and came back right before he died. Sure. No, he obviously was obviously up to no good in Mexico. And he, you know, how normal is it to have a backpack in your house with a handgun and $7,000 cash? How normal is that? You typically keep $7,000 just sitting around your house in a go bag with a gun? I don't. But that's what happened. He comes in from Mexico and he says, Jalima, here, take this bag, hide it. There's money in it. It's for you. Is that normal? No, it's not normal, especially for a guy who doesn't work. Where the hell did he come up with $7,000 cash? I'm telling you, some funny business happening around this group. And there were a lot of them, a lot of people that were involved in it. And they were all experiencing the same sets of symptoms, this peculiar belief system. All of this, going to people's houses and having Chad teach them things. It's weird crap, you know? Melanie Gibb is up to this in her eyeballs, and she can't even talk for an hour without mentioning Jason Mao's name 2 different times. A minimum of twice, maybe more. Some very, very strange things. Very strange things. Okay, so this is 2 hours. In 2 minutes, it's going to be a 2-hour live, which was what I was thinking it would be, because this was a lot of information. And I didn't even talk about Chad. You realize that? 2 hours, 100% just talking about what might be going on, that Lori was incompetent for standing trial, and then she's rehabilitated, and now she's been found competent. That tells me she was experiencing something that was treatable and responded well to the medications. And the all of the description that we had about her from family members and court records definitely match the possibility of a bipolar problem. And then, of course, we've all suspected the personality disorder, you know, all along. But we haven't even got to old Chad. Old Chin McGuinn. We're going to get to him not Tuesday. It'll be Wednesday. We will be talking about the Chadster. Did he go to Brazil too? I wouldn't be a bit surprised if he did. Yeah, her mind's clicking. She's trying to figure out. She's trying to figure out how she gets somebody to care for her, because that's her life. That's her bread and butter. Someone like Lori needs to be loved, needs to be admired, required to be loved and to be looked up to, admired. That's more important to her than food and air and water. Her body position is bizarre. Chad's kids put 100% of the blame on Lori. Oh no, this was more than Lori. This was bigger than Lori. For one thing, Lori wasn't smart enough to pull all this off. I guess I can add a little bit more. No, I'm going to be, okay, I'm going to end this live. Okay. Thank you, Hazel. I appreciate that. I'm going to end this live so it's manageable. And then after I get it all set up, give me about 10 minutes And I'll be back because I've got another topic to talk about where Lori Vallow is concerned. Okay? All right. Thank you guys so much for being here. I appreciate it so much. If you haven't subscribed, I hope you will. Use thumbs up or thumbs down, depending on whether or not you enjoyed the content. And I hope you will leave me a comment because I love to read your comments. All right. I'll see you in about 10 minutes. Bye.